What if the African continent broke apart? Imagine the vast continent of Africa, its sprawling savannas, dense rainforests, mighty rivers, arid deserts, and bustling cities. Now picture, beneath this great landmass, immense geological forces simmering for millions of years. The African continent, ancient and diverse, rests atop some of the most dynamic tectonic plates on Earth. But what if those forces intensified, causing Africa to fracture and break apart into several separate landmasses? What would that mean for its landscapes, climate, people, economies, wildlife, and even the world at large? Let's explore, step by step, what might unfold if the African continent split apart. First, consider the tectonic forces already at work today. The East African Rift System, one of the most prominent active rifts in the world, stretches from the Red Sea down to Mozambique. This rift is essentially a tear in the Earth's surface, where two tectonic plates are slowly moving apart. Along this line, the ground is sinking, enormous valleys are forming, and immense geological change is underway. Scientists predict that, given enough time, tens of millions of years, a new ocean could form, and part of eastern Africa could indeed split from the rest of the continent. But what if somehow this process was dramatically sped up or intensified, and all of Africa fractured into several major pieces within the span of a few centuries, or even decades? To begin, envision the physical change. Africa would morph from a single, recognizable landmass into a cluster of continents and large islands, possibly resembling the world's archipelagos like Indonesia, but on a far grander scale. The split wouldn't be neat lines. Massive cracks and valleys would widen, stretching from Ethiopia and Kenya in the north, all the way to Mozambique in the south. And as the rift widened, the Indian Ocean would surge inland, flooding the valley and transforming highlands into islands, lowlands into new coastlines, and creating a brand new sea that might, in time, rival the Mediterranean or the Red Sea. But the changes wouldn't stop at the East African Rift. Imagine if the splitting extended across other ancient fault lines and weak spots in the African plate. Northern Africa could break away from the south, the Sahara Desert morphing from an unbroken expanse into a fractured plain with ancient, dry riverbeds deepening into canyons or filling with water to become new lakes or seas. The long-defunct West African Rift System could revive, potentially splitting the lush jungles of the Congo Basin off from the arid regions to the north and west. Southern Africa could drift away, isolated perhaps by a vast inland ocean. This broken Africa would reshape global maps. Familiar borders and countries might vanish, replaced by new island nations and peninsulas. The Nile River, long the lifeblood of northern Africa, could be cut asunder, its tributaries rerouted or submerged beneath rising seas. The legendary Congo River might spill into a new gulf, carving new routes through rapidly shifting terrain. As Africa broke, the cataclysmic geological events would bring dramatic upheaval. Massive earthquakes would ripple across the land, toppling buildings and changing landscapes overnight. Dormant volcanoes, triggered by shifting plates, might awaken, spewing ash and lava. The climate itself would begin to change, especially around the new bodies of water. Rainfall patterns would shift. Areas once lush might dry out, while arid places could become humid as moist sea air flows in from new coastlines. But beyond the sheer physical transformation, what would this mean for the people and societies of Africa? Africa is home to over 1.3 billion people, with thousands of languages, diverse cultures, and rapidly growing economies. A breakup of the continent would affect every aspect of their lives. Short term, the disruption would be immense. Cities and towns near new rift lines would be devastated, roads and railways severed, supply chains disrupted, millions potentially displaced by natural disasters, earthquakes, floods, and volcanic eruptions. Governments would face unprecedented challenges in protecting citizens, aiding refugees, rebuilding infrastructure, and maintaining stability. Entire regions could be cut off as terrain becomes impassable. Reuniting families and reconnecting split communities across newly formed seas could become a central challenge. Yet, over the long term, new possibilities might arise. The creation of new coastlines could open formerly landlocked regions to the sea, enabling new ports, trade routes, or even fishing economies to flourish. Formerly resource-poor areas might find themselves rich in newfound fisheries or with easier access to global shipping lanes. For instance, the Great Lakes region, already a source of regional conflict and commerce, could emerge as a critical maritime hub. Conversely, the dividing of unified countries, such as Ethiopia, Kenya, or the Democratic Republic of the Congo, could spark political turmoil. Borders would need redrawing, new governments might emerge, and questions of citizenship, language, and allegiance could plunge regions into strife, or perhaps drive new forms of regional cooperation. Ecologically, the massive shift would bring about both devastation and opportunity. Africa is home to some of the planet's most famous and endangered wildlife. Elephants and lions, gorillas and rhinos, zebras and hippos, living in varied ecosystems from the Serengeti Plains to the Congo forests. As the land fractures, migration routes could be severed, water sources rerouted, and habitats altered forever. Some species might perish, unable to adapt to the new climate or geography. Others, more adaptable or blessed by the new environment, could find unexpected opportunities to thrive. For example, new coastlines would create unique habitats for shorebirds, fish, and marine mammals. Over time, evolution would take hold. With populations isolated on new islands or peninsulas, unique species might emerge, just as Madagascar spawned its own distinct lemurs, or the Galapagos their own finches and tortoises. Africa, in the distant future, could become a patchwork of evolutionary hotspots, home to animals and plants found nowhere else. But what about the impact on Africa's climate and resources? The creation of new seas and coastlines would alter the movement of air masses and ocean currents. Inland regions, once scorched by sun and starved for water, might see more rainfall as moist sea breezes sweep in. Weather, always a source of challenge and renewal on the continent, could become less predictable. New climates might enrich some areas, generating new forests or farmland, while rendering others uninhabitable. The swelling presence of water would change everything from farming to disease. While new access to fisheries and ocean transport might spur economies, standing water in newly created low-lying regions could foster outbreaks of waterborne disease. Some regions might benefit from increased agricultural potential due to higher humidity and regular rains, while others might be undermined by saltwater intrusion or the loss of fertile river valleys. Economically, the impact of Africa breaking apart would be profound, catastrophic for some, a windfall for others. The continent's mineral riches, like gold, copper, and cobalt, are vital to the global economy. Tectonic shifts and fracturing could both bury and expose new reserves of minerals and fossil fuels, spurring exploration and, inevitably, competition to control these resources. Some countries or regions might find themselves sitting atop newly accessible deposits, while others could lose access or find themselves left behind. The oil-rich nations clustered around the Gulf of Guinea might see their oil fields split or submerged. New offshore drilling opportunities might open up along freshly minted coasts, but at significant environmental risk. Infrastructure built over generations for roads, pipelines, rail, and ports would need redesigning and reconstruction, demanding immense investment and international cooperation. Globally, a fractured Africa would be felt far beyond the continent. Africa is a vital hub of trade, culture, and resources. Disruption to its economies would reverberate worldwide, impacting everything from food prices to the supply of rare minerals used in electronics and green technologies. Waves of climate refugees, prompted by environmental change or disasters, could migrate across the new islands or beyond, shaping demographic and cultural trends worldwide. Meanwhile, the new geography would reset military and strategic calculations. Existing alliances would be tested, new maritime boundaries disputed, and naval control of key straits and sea routes would become hotly contested. Coastal security, anti-piracy efforts, and the policing of new shipping lanes would take on new urgency. On a more philosophical level, the breaking of Africa would have a profound psychological and cultural impact. Africa's geography has nurtured distinct civilizations for thousands of years. Ancient Egypt along the Nile, the Malian empires in the west, the Swahili coastal cities in the east. The land itself is woven deeply into identities and histories. With the ground beneath their feet literally changing shape, people might find themselves searching for new ways to define community, heritage, and belonging. Languages and traditions, already rich and varied across Africa's many nations, could fragment further, or conversely, see renewed efforts to preserve endangered tongues and traditions isolated by fracturing geography. Artistic expression, music, and storytelling might reflect new realities, legends arising about the earth splitting and seas flooding in, shaping the mythology of future generations. Yet, there may also be new unity born of shared adversity. The need to survive and rebuild could spark cooperation where once there was division. Just as the world rallied together after natural disasters, the Boxing Day tsunami, the Haiti earthquake, so might African nations, along with the global community, find common cause in supporting reconstruction, conservation, and resilience. Technologically, necessity could breed innovation. Africa is already a leader in mobile banking and solar energy adoption. The challenge of connecting fractured territories might propel investment in new infrastructure, bridges, tunnels, high-speed ferries, or even underwater trains. Urban planners, architects, and engineers would be pressed to design resilient cities adapted to new coastlines and geological risks. Freshwater desalination, fish farming, and floating agriculture could become widespread. Long in the future, when the dust settles, children might grow up not in the heart of a great continent, but on islands that were once mountaintops or peninsulas carved from ancient valleys. Maps would look vastly different, but the tenacity, creativity, and solidarity of Africa's people would shape how this new landscape is used and cherished. Of course, this scenario of Africa splitting apart so quickly and dramatically is, for now, in the realm of imagination. The real East African rift and other tectonic divides are moving slowly, at the rate of centimeters per year. The full breakup of the continent would likely take tens of millions of years. Yet, pondering the possibility lets us reflect on both the power of Earth's geology and the resilience of those who inhabit it. In the end, if Africa were to break apart, it would not be the end of the continent's story, but the beginning of a new chapter, one of upheaval, adaptation, discovery, and hope. How would Africans work to preserve their cultures when communities are suddenly divided by new oceans? With familiar landscapes radically changed, would old rivalries be set aside in pursuit of survival and progress? Would new cities rise along unfamiliar shorelines, becoming the economic hubs of the future? Might ancient myths be reborn, or new legends written about the time the earth cracked and seas were born? There would, without doubt, be loss of homes, habitats, and perhaps entire ways of life. The cost, human and ecological, could be staggering. Yet, within this challenge might lie immense opportunity. New resources, new environments, and new forms of cooperation could emerge, reshaping Africa's place in the world. Zooming out even further, what would scientists and historians far in the future, perhaps tens of thousands of years from now, make of a world where the silhouette of Africa is no longer one unbroken piece? Future generations may look back at today's maps the way we look at ancient reconstructions of Pangaea or Gondwana, marveling at how the continents once fit together. The splitting of Africa would also teach powerful lessons about how interlinked human societies are with the geology of our planet. Disruption from natural forces would lay bare the strengths and flaws in our political, social, and economic systems. It would test the flexibility, compassion, and problem-solving skills of governments, scientists, and ordinary people alike. Above all, such a transformation would drive home a deeper truth. That change, sometimes vast, sometimes violent, is a constant in Earth's history. Life survives, adapts, and often thrives in the face of upheaval. The breaking of Africa would be written in the rocks, in the DNA of species, in the songs and stories of its people. It would be a fresh beginning, a reminder that the only true constant is change, and that the story of Africa, like the story of the world, is unfinished and alive. So while the African continent remains whole for now, the story of its landscape is one of ancient collisions, slow separations, and relentless transformation. Whether in the slow creep of tectonic drift or in our imaginings of a fractured future, Africa is and always will be a land of resilience and reinvention.